So this week we are reading about famous Arizonans. So on page 1 of the newspaper, we read a little bit about Barry Goldwater and Lori Piestewa. You might have noticed that there was nothing that we highlighted on that first page. Nothing from that first page is going to pop up in any of our questions, but we will see a lot from this page as we talk about our Arizona heroes. So make sure as I read that you are following along and doing your highlighting. Once again, you can highlight right on your screen, and I'll show you how to do that when the first thing to highlight comes up. You can print out the newspaper and highlight it with an actual highlighter, or you can just grab a piece of paper and take some notes down when I say stuff that you should be highlighting so that you have it when it comes time to answer the questions. Whatever method works best for you is totally fine with me. As we read about these Arizona heroes, you'll notice that they're all numbered, number 1, number 2, and then you can see all the pictures over here are also numbered, so you can kind of have an idea of what these people look like as they are being talked about. So here we go, Arizona heroes. Number 1, Lozin. Here she is right here, the Apache heroine. Heroine, I know a lot of us hear that word and we think, oh my gosh, that's a bad word. We're talking about something bad. But the word heroine is actually just a female hero, okay? So Lozin was an Apache hero. Let's find out why. Imagine you are hiding in a cave with all your family and friends. If your enemies find you, they will kill most of your family and send those who are left to Florida, a far-off place you've never seen. Your only chance is to escape and either go far away or find other groups of your people to help fight your enemies. If only there was some way to tell where your enemy was. Well, if you happened to be part of Chief Vittorio's family back in the 1870s, your chances for escape would be much greater. The chief's sister, Lozin, was known to have a mysterious power. According to legend handed down from those who were there, Lozin had the ability to know where the enemy was and how close they were. So, the sister of a chief already makes her pretty important, but this mysterious power that she had was something that made her really, really special, especially at this time when a lot of horrible things were going on in Arizona. So Lozin, very, very important for this mysterious power she had. That's going to come up later. That's why I'm highlighting that. After her brother was killed, Lozin joined with Geronimo's band, we read about him a few weeks ago, and resisted American settlement until 1886 when Geronimo surrendered. Number 2, Charlotte Hall. Here she is right over here, another very important person in Arizona's history. Here's a woman who proved she was as tough or tougher than John Wayne or any other hero. We read about John Wayne in one of our other newspapers, and we're going to read a little bit more about him in just a moment. Charlotte Hall was born on the American frontier in the 1870s. She was only 11 when her parents moved from Kansas to Arizona in 1882, but she rode her horse the entire way. I don't know about you, but that's a long way to ride a horse. I think my bottom would be hurting. That's a long, long horse ride there. She grew up as a rancher's daughter near Prescott, but always knew she wanted to do something different when she grew up. Charlotte loved to write, and she loved the beauty of the Southwest. She wrote poems and articles that were good enough to catch the attention of the editor of Out West, a popular magazine of her time. For the next 10 years, Charlotte wrote for this magazine and became quite well known. Charlotte is best known for her work as the territorial historian of Arizona. Despite the hardship and roughness of the roads, Charlotte traveled to every settlement in Arizona by horse, capturing the stories of the people of those hardy pioneer days. So that's pretty amazing that she did that. She rode her horse, so I'm going to highlight this, and wrote down all the stories of the early people in Arizona. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't know a lot about what went on in the early days of Arizona, so that makes her quite important. Her writing of those days has caused us to fondly remember her as Arizona's pioneer lady of literature. Number 3, I Dream of Jeannie, and if you show your parents this picture, they're going to know right away who she was, and they're probably going to do this funny thing where they wrinkle up their nose and try and move it from side to side. This was a famous TV show from a very long time ago. And a lot of people are like, wait a minute, what does that have to do with Arizona? So let's find out. I Dream of Jeannie. You may have seen reruns of the popular TV show I Dream of Jeannie. Did you know that the star of the show is from Tucson? Her real name is Barbara Jean Moorhead, but everyone knows her as Barbara Eden. That's her right here. Barbara starred in several other roles, including one with Elvis Presley and one in the TV series How to Marry a Millionaire. It's kind of cool to hear about celebrities that are from Arizona. Number 4, Sandra Day O'Connor. Here's her picture right here in the middle. Very, very important woman. Obviously, another high school named after her, one that many of you will probably go to. Have you ever been in an argument? You better be saying yes, because I know you all have. Did you have the last word? I also know many of you are good at that. Going to court is an organized argument. The attorneys do the arguing, and the jury and or the judge has the last word. They decide who is at fault. Often, when the attorneys aren't happy with the decision, they decide to ask a higher and then an even higher court to take their case. The highest court in the country is the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, we're all very familiar with the word supreme, especially Brody E., because he loves drawing that Supreme logo on everything he sees. Supreme means the best, the most important. That's why that brand of clothing is so popular, because they call themselves the best. So the Supreme Court is the most important, the best court in the United States. The court has 9 judges, and whatever they decide becomes the supreme law of the land. For a long time, there were no women judges in the U.S. Supreme Court. That is until Sandra Day O'Connor of Arizona came along. So we're going to highlight that. And even though, didn't mean for that to move that way. Sorry. I just accidentally highlighted everything. Sorry. Even though it doesn't say it in these specific words, it's important to know that before Sandra Day O'Connor came along, there were no women in the Supreme Court. Therefore, she was the first. That's a really big deal. I mean, back then, for women to be able to do anything of power was a really big deal, and that's obviously why we have Sandra Day O'Connor High School named after her. So what did Justice O'Connor do to earn her appointment to the highest court? Well, that's a topic for an entire book, but we at Arizona Studies Weekly think that it had something to do with how willing Sandra Day O'Connor was to serve. She volunteered to serve in more than 18 different civic organizations, most of them right here in Arizona. Helping all those different organizations solve their problems gave Justice O'Connor the wisdom she needed to have the last word. Why that's in quotes there, because as the Supreme Court Justice, she would have the last word. She would make the final decision, but she was so good at making the final decision because of all of the serving and helping that she did in different organizations. She learned a lot and had the last word. That's a good thing. She retired in 2006 after 25 years as a Supreme Court Justice. Now, number 5 over here is John Wayne. We read about him in one of our old newspapers about the Wild Wild West. You might remember reading about him. Ever heard of the John Wayne Airport near Disneyland? Now that's famous. He didn't start that way, though. After playing football at the University of Southern California, he got into acting. Marion Morrison's first important starring role and the name John Wayne were given to him by director Raoul Walsh in 1929. So obviously John Wayne was not his real name, but it definitely sounds better than Marion Morrison. The picture was The Big Trail, parts of which were filmed in Arizona. But his breakout role didn't come until 10 years later, when director John Ford liked John Wayne's powerful, rugged appearance and his way of acting. He thought Duke, as Wayne was respectfully called, could be a star. He cast Wayne in his Western classic movie Stagecoach, also filmed in Arizona in 1939. It was the first of many hits. Wayne won an Academy Award as Best Actor in 1969 for True Grit. John Wayne wasn't born in Arizona, but we can claim him because 17 of Wayne's films were at least partly filmed in Arizona, and he owned 2 ranches here in Springerville and Casa Grande, including the 26 Bar Ranch. So we're going to highlight that because that is important to know that even though he wasn't born in Arizona, he filmed a lot of his movies here and he owned 2 ranches here, which makes him kind of an Arizona famous person. Although he died in 1979, John Wayne's legacy is still alive today. The John Wayne Cancer Foundation was founded in his honor to help find a cure for cancer. Number 6 is Ted DeGracia. Ted grew up in Arizona, the son of a poor immigrant from Italy. His father worked as a miner, but Ted DeGracia heard another call. He practiced his own unusual and different style of painting until it was perfected. People loved his work. His paintings began to earn more and more money. After a while, his art was so popular that it was put on things like t-shirts, plates, greeting cards, and even playing cards. You've seen his work before, haven't you? I bet you have. If you were to do a Google search for his name and see the images that come up, you would be really surprised to find out how much of his work you've already seen. Another famous Arizonan, Reggie Jackson. Here's his picture right here. Reggie played baseball at Arizona State University before going on to a Hall of Fame career as one of baseball's greatest clutch hitters. Reggie helped 3 different teams win 10 division titles in 12 years. Although he wasn't very good defensively, Reggie made up for it with his hitting. He hit 563 home runs during his career. He was especially good in World Series competition. Reggie received the Most Valuable Player award in 2 different World Series and became known as Mr. October for his key hits during those games. And number 8 famous person from Arizona, Irma Bombeck. Here she is right here. Your mom and dad will probably recognize this name from when we were kids, because I recognize it from when I was a kid as well. Irma Bombeck loved her husband and children. At age 37, though, she decided there was more to life than kids and housework. So she decided to start writing about kids and housework. How funny is that? She wanted to find more to her life than just taking care of her kids and doing housework, so she started writing about kids and housework. That is going to be one of our questions later, so I'm going to highlight that information right there. She's a pretty important person, though. Here's something she once said about getting her kids to eat. In general, my children refuse to eat anything that hasn't danced on television. If you think back to the early days of TV and commercials, all early commercials had dancing food, so that's what she means by that. Life was not always easy for Irma. Her father died when she was only 9 years old. After his death, the family lost their home and everything in it when they could no longer pay the bills. At age 20, Emma learned that she had polycystic kidney disease and was told that the disease would someday cause her kidneys to fail. But she didn't just sit around waiting for her kidneys to stop working. She got married, had 3 children, and started a writing career that made her one of the most popular writers in America. Not just in Arizona, in America. She and her family moved to Paradise Valley, Arizona in 1971. Irma had a funny but wise way of writing that people loved. Her newspaper column appeared regularly in hundreds of newspapers. She wrote 15 books, including The Grass is Always Greener Over the Septic Tank and If Life is a Bowl of Cherries, What Am I Doing in the Pits? Now, those probably don't seem very funny to you, but if you share those titles with your parents, they will probably get a good chuckle out of that. Another setback came in 1991 when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. 2 years later, her kidneys began to fail, just as the doctors had predicted. In 1996, Irma had a kidney transplant, but she died of complications shortly after the surgery. So a little bit of a sad story there, but she still is one of Arizona's most famous citizens. We'll continue on with the rest of the newspaper in another video.